One brush, many women. That's our Nicholas. Many women. Happened to be one of his women in the audience, which would actually, she would be his wife. They lived together on the peninsula outside of Victoria. It's been my honor, actually, and fun to get to know Nick. I actually met Nick in Victoria, where we both live, over these last years. But it's 10 years I've been here, 5, that Nick has been a part of this wonderful event that Bob Wright has so graciously made possible, right? So anyway, with Nick, what's so interesting is literally, he's come from that illustrative world, and now we see him slapping on the paint with a limited number of colors and one brush. You just have to ask him how big is that brush and what shape is that brush. So I think that's what you're going to hear about and see and watch. And so choose if you want to learn how to do that. So have fun with his slap and dashing and swashbuckling. If you need more than that, I'm sure he will drum his way into your heart, if not by his love of women.
Thank you and welcome. It's always interesting being the last presentation of Sunday because I love seeing the diehards in the crowd. You guys are here, and thank you for coming in. I am going to talk about one brush, and good, Nancy left it for me. Excellent.
I was going to take it.
Yes, I figured you might. This is the only brush I use. It's, as you can see, it's a Purdy 1.5 inch XL Dale house painter's brush. For all of you who with a lovely collection of very expensive stables in your stable. The story I love to tell about getting this brush, I used to paint with an 1.5 inch house painter's brush of a different brand, and I could never find the name on the handle. I had too much paint when it wore out. So I'm going to go up here so I can be seen better. So I went to Cloverdale Paints and I said, show me all your 1.5 inch house painter's brushes. And he said, okay, well we have this rack and we have this rack. And I said, what's wrong with this rack? And he said, oh, they're expensive. Expensive? I said, yeah. He says, these are $3.95 and these are $7.95 and these are $14. So you can tell I picked up a few at $14. And I have been painting with these exclusively. And I'm going to show you today why these are the only brush I use and how to use them. Just quick hands up. How many in the group have taken my class before? Okay. So I obviously have to improve how I teach you how to use the brush. No, I want to thank you for coming because it's really nice to see the support. And I know from experience in my classes there is so much to learn that it's always good to come back and check it out again. Having said that, those of you who have been in my class before have heard me say on many occasions that everything that you paint on the canvas is related to everything else. So you have to paint the whole image. You have to get paint on everything at once. I'm trying to figure out where to go from here. Yeah, okay. So everything in this image is related to everything else in it. So when you're putting the paint on the canvas, you cannot get one part to work until the other part is next to it. And every time I tell them that, they look at me kind of funny. They're going, "Oh, come on! There is a reality to the paint. You know, it's finite. It's exactly what I see in the way I paint it." And so I want to show you this. See this lovely little display? I figured this out. I'm going to use this in my class from now on. I want you to look at those 3 colors. And here's the test. Only one of those 3 colors is exactly the same from top to bottom. Which one? Only one. Hands up, which one believes it's the purple side? Hands up. Okay, hands up, which one believes it's the red side? Hands up, which one believes it's the gray side? Oh, okay. Very even split. So, how about we check it out? Purple side, hands up, who? Great. You believe the purple is exactly the same, top to bottom? Okay, red side, hands up again. Who got the red? Oh, far less. How many believe that red is the same top to bottom? So the only one that actually doesn't look the same is the gray. And it is exactly the same. Yeah, it was an intellectual choice, right? This is exactly why you have to have everything on the canvas before you can make anything work. It's because it's all relative. So, having said that, I'm just going to remove this so it doesn't draw your attention for the rest of the afternoon. Well, thank you. I think I'm going to use that in the class from now on. Okay, let's get on with this. Colors. You heard Nancy mention the colors. This is it. This is all the colors I use. Cadmium red dark, cadmium red light, cadmium yellow medium, phthalo blue, and titanium white. That's literally red, white, and blue, all you really need. And I know that there are very few colors that you can't, there are a few colors that you can't mix with that. Like there are a few purples that you cannot make with those colors because the cadmium reds have too much yellow in them. But as long as it works in a painting, you don't have to get the exact color. Secondly, this is my palette. I just love telling you guys about the little interesting things that you can learn to use rather than just going to the art store and buying the expensive big paper palette that you spray water on it and put the paint on the pieces of paper. This is just a Tupperware container. And you just squeeze the paint out on the top of it. And when you go for coffee or stuff for the rest of the day, you just put the lid back on and it stays fresh. You can keep going for days with this. All right. Now, also in my class, I grid. Grid is a very old technique for transferring images. So the concept is to get an image that works. This is a photograph I took with the Alma de España Dance Company in Victoria. They've been dancing flamenco in Victoria for 20 years, and I've been painting them for almost that long, too, for that matter. So you start with an image that works, the whole image. It's not about finding something in it and then trying to make everything else work around it, because it's about the relationships within the painting. It's everything in there is important, including these little triangles down here in the corners. So the idea is to grid it and then put it up on the canvas. Just basically get the painting part out of it, or the drawing part out of the way, I should say. This stage is really confining. So. I am feeling constrained. I am going to stop feeling constrained, and I'm going to start getting flamboyant. How about that? Let's get rambunctious. Oh, all right. Yeah, it's the fall off part, I'm afraid. And we're having a discussion over here. Come on. Okay. I will see if I can do this without falling off the stage. It is going to be hard. It's going to be cozy. But here I am. Okay. One of the other things that I like to teach my students is the concept of mixing on the canvas. I mean, this is a really small surface, right? And you notice that there are basically large puddles of color and not much else. So it's not a place to go grab the reds, grab the yellows, mix them in the corner, make a great big puddle of color and put on here, because through most of this, that one color is going to only be used in a certain small little part. So you might as well mix it right there on the canvas. Now, when squeezing out paint, let's get some paint squeezed out. Lots and lots and lots. This is not the time to be thrifty. You got to get lots of paint out because you're going to grab it. You're going to grab it when you need it. And you're not going to want to have to stop and open up the tubes. So we'll get some paint out there.
What brand is that?
This one? This is a brand you can't buy anymore. It's called Grumbacher Finest. And Grumbacher went out of business, and it was my favorite paint. Oh, I miss it so much. And I bought out the last of the stock, and I'm slowly working my way through it.
What will your replacement be?
That one.
Gotta stick with the G's, right?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Next you go to Graham.
No. One thing I want to point out is that this is a regular golden acrylic. This isn't the golden open type. The golden open type would completely screw me up in my technique because it takes way too long to dry. And this stuff has got to dry in 20 minutes or else. Because the technique is about painting wet over dry. All right, here we are. I'm ready. Send me in, coach. Okay, here we go. Now, I'm terrified to start a painting. Anybody else terrified to start a painting? I'm terrified to start a painting. So, what I do is look at the painting and find where the blacks are. The blacks are the easiest to mix. Because the black, as you notice, I didn't squeeze out any black. So you got to mix the black. Black is the phthalo blue and the cadmium red dark. So you just grab some. It's not about mixing it. You just grab some because it's all going to be up here in that particular location anyway. So you might as well just mix it there and start laying it in. And the beauty of it is you get to lay it in as fast as you can. Get as much of it on there as possible. And just keep grabbing and going. And at this point, it's just a fill-in situation. You just keep filling it in. Fill in where it's black. It's a little bit like paint by numbers. Everything that's a number 6, you paint the number 6. Now, I want you to notice how I'm holding the brush. Holding the brush basically like you would a spoon. And painting with the edge, the long edge of the brush. That gives me control over the wedge, because the brush creates a wedge right there. So now that becomes a small brush with a wedge tip to it. I know some of you are probably thinking, why doesn't he just pick up a small brush with a wedge tip to it? Look at all the bristles at the back. Look at all the paint that's stored in there. Look at how much paint I can take to the canvas with that. By the way, if you ever have any questions during this talk, just shout them out.
What color is your ground?
This ground is, that's a good question. Normally I paint on black. I just squeeze out a black and go for it. If I have any old tubes of paint around, like a little bit of red left or whatever, I'll squeeze that in too. So that's basically what this is. I had a couple of extra tubes of red I squeezed in with the black and just painted on the ground.
And then what did you draw with when you drew?
The drawing part, I use an aquarelle pencil, basically a watercolor pencil, so that it will come off when painting the acrylic paint on there. And it's very important when drawing to get all of the edges of tonal shifts that you need in there. Like for instance, there's a tonal shift on the neck here, so I have to make sure I get that tonal shift in place. Another tonal shift on the neck here, so I get that one in place. Because it's not just about outlines, it's about where there's a change in color. Now, it's a case of just filling it in, just basically getting on with the big stuff. And as I say, being terrified of getting started, this is a great way to do it because it is kind of like house painting. You just find a wall and start slapping paint on it. But eventually, you'll get to a spot where you've run out of large, flat, dark areas. And once you hit that spot, hopefully I'm warmed up by then, and hopefully I can then start figuring out where the next part is to go. Now, one of the beautiful things about acrylic paint is unlike oil paint, it doesn't get that muddy. It's, you know how if you get too much color on your brush and you start adding more and more, it just gets muddier and muddier. But the acrylic, you add a different color to it, it suddenly becomes a different color. So I haven't washed the brush at all. And I'm not going to wash the brush at all. Let me just finish these parts here. I'm not going to wash the brush. I am just going to dive in with a different color. Again, I just need to fill these in with the blacks first because this is the mainstay of the painting. Fill that in there, put that in there, put that in there. Even where there's black on other parts, other colors, or almost black, you fill those in as well.
Is it a canvas or a board?
This is a canvas, yes. The question was, is this a canvas or a board? And it's a canvas. I like the flex of the surface. Okay, so, well, that's most of it. Actually, there's a little spot right down here I want to get. This is a major dark area, right down there. You notice if the beauty of holding it like this is you can use the brush all these different ways. You can get at it, you can move that chisel tip around, you can go at any angle. You just need to follow the angle that you need to get it on with, and you can create a nice hard line. If you held the brush like this, you would get this movement only. You might get this movement, it's a little unnatural, but most of this movement. You hold it like this, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this, and you're moving it with your arm, your whole arm. You're getting the expressiveness of the whole body into the painting process. Okay, haven't washed the brush at all. Oh, let's just do this, just pour that in there. Okay, that's good, that's a good start. Haven't washed the brush at all. Now let's add a little bit of yellow and light red. Okay. Just slap it in there. I'm using the color that's already in the brush. Grab some more blue and dark red, and some light red and some yellow. The color that's already in the brush, and it's kind of like cleaning the brush on the canvas as you just scrub it into the bristles or into the fibers of the canvas. Just keep going. Grab the colors. Don't do a lot of messing around and mixing. Just get them straight into here. Now the reds start to modify the blues and the greens. You notice if it gets to be too green, see, this is the color I'm after. This is the color I've put on the canvas. Don't worry about it. If the color's wrong going on the canvas, the beauty of having the limited palette is you only have two other ways to go to change it. So grab a little red, throw a little red into there. And just keep brushing it down until you get close. Grab a little bit of straight reds and go at it. It's amazing how much of the canvas you can get covered and painted as you go. You notice how that went on quite light red, and then as I'm brushing it, it gets darker and darker because I'm muddying it up with the colors and the bristles. That's why this brush is so important for this technique, because you've got to use the residual colors that are in the brush. Okay, I'm even going to grab a little white here. Okay, throw a little white in there, but you notice it doesn't go in white, it goes in muddy, which is perfect, because that's what I want. Okay, it was a little too red, so grab a little yellow with it. Throw some yellow in there, start bringing it around the edges and down. Now if the paint is starting to get a little too sticky, you can either grab more paint, which I just did, or just a touch of water. You notice how little I've gone to the bucket of water. At this point, the water in the bucket is only to get the paint to flow. Place. One of my favorite quotes is from the art instructor who said, painting's easy. All you have to do is get the right color and the right tone and the right, whatever, in the right place, right shape in the right place. And if you think about it, that's really all it is. The trick is trying to make sure that you just stay there as far as getting the right color, in the right tone, in the right shape, in the right place. And when you're done, it all works. Just like that. Okay? So, even though that's a red dress, it's not a pure red dress. So I can start grabbing, even with a dirty brush, both of the reds and start putting them on and see what color I end up with. Okay, there's a nice heavy-duty color, heavy-duty red. I can put it in place. I can add a touch of white where it starts to get light, right up in here. You notice, just grab a touch. When I say a touch, it's just basically tinting the bristle. And start rubbing it into what I already have on the brush and on the canvas. Okay, go back in to other spots, move it around, grab some more color if I need to go back into the darks. Down in here, for instance. Move this down. The other exciting part about this is it gets to be physical. It gets to be fun. It gets to be that flow. All of the tensions of screwing up, which I always have, but all the tensions of screwing up kind of go away because I'm too busy to even think about them at this point. It's just getting it off, getting the paint off the bristles onto the canvas as fast as possible, and seeing how they work together. It's always been my favorite, that one, actually.
Barry has arrived.
But you see how there's no need to clean the brush, there's no need to stop, there's no need to change brushes, change anything, no need to stand and mix color. You just slap it on. If it's not right, you grab something to make it right. Now, you'll notice I'm putting this on in a very kind of oil painty kind of way, straight out of the tube, good thick goopy stuff. So, that is exactly the way you start. Put it on thick. Start adding color where you need to add color to change it. Move it along. A little bit there, a little bit light red, a little bit of white to lighten it a touch. You'll also notice that I'm using very little white. It's almost all pure color straight out of the tube. There will be white when we get down to places that look like they need white, places that are pastel in their nature. But at the moment, it's just almost straight color and mixtures of color, because almost every color has a mixture of the colors, all the colors in it anyway. Okay, and even if you get carried away, like that's too much, right? So, even if I get carried away, I keep wanting to put it on you guys, you notice that? Even if I get carried away there, just grab a different color and go at it. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to grab a different color and go right over top of what's already there. Fill that in, put that in there. Okay, that is a little darker up top, so grab a little dark red with the blue tint in it. Go across. Etc., etc., etc. Now, having talked about how everything is in relationship, I can't actually finish the dress, I can't finish the floor, I can't finish any of this until I get this stuff in here, that stuff in place. So, having said that, I'm going to now swap over. I'm just going to change brushes rather than running out of the room and cleaning that one. I'm going to deal with this part of the canvas next. So, let's just grab some white and some yellow.
What's the name of the yellow you're using?
Sorry?
What's the name of the yellow you're using?
Cadmium yellow medium. This is almost a case where I wish I had a bigger brush, you know? Because it's not going on fast enough. Come on, let's go. Put it on there. Just a touch of water.
Nicholas, can you
Yep.
mention about medium, that you choose not to use it why?
Yes, I don't use mediums because a medium will change the texture of the paint. And one of the things I'm going to eventually get to, if I have time today, is how the actual texture of the paint changes as you get through the painting process. I also don't want the painting drying time to change. I want to know how quickly it's going to dry. I want it to dry as quickly as possible. And I don't want to change anything other than what I can control with water. The paint goes on, as I was saying, the paint goes on in an oil painting consistency at first, just like what I'm doing right now. And as we get through the painting process, it gets thinner and thinner until at the end it's actually going on like watercolor. So it's a lot thinner process. So to use a medium doesn't really change it that much. I just never saw any reason to use a medium, that's all. So you can't ever accuse me of striking a happy medium. Oh, also, I should be singing, shouldn't I? But I don't have any music. Oh, well. That's pretend. Okay. I could serenade. Yeah. That's what I do in my class, is that everybody sings. Everybody sings in the class. And what I've discovered is that when you're singing, you cannot fret about your painting. Because you can't think about the two things at once. You either have to sing or fret about your painting. It works with skiing. You can sing while you're skiing. Wow, never tried that. I've never tried skiing. Yes, the other thing about singing while you're painting is that music has an emotional impact. Every time you put your brush to your canvas, it's going to show how you're feeling. If you're feeling something, like if you're really into the emotions of the song, it's going to show in how you put the paint on the canvas. It's really going to help, actually. I think that's why I usually like to play Dazed and Confused. It kind of speaks to me. Okay, so as you can see, it's a case of just basically filling it in. And you notice how I am not fretting hugely about edges, but I am not actually going over edges either. It's never a case of, say you have a wallpaper that's got stripes in it that you're trying to paint. You don't paint one color and then go back in and put the stripes. As you notice, I've drawn the stripes here and here and here, which is here, here, and here. And you'll notice I'm not painting over with the idea of going back and doing them. I'm leaving them. Because those are an integral part of the painting. It's a psychological thing about not painting over them, because you have to keep them as a piece of the puzzle. The whole painting is a puzzle, and the pieces have to butt up against each other. They don't fit over top each other. So you have to keep thinking of them as individual pieces. You also have to not pick up a lot of blue on the way up. Having said that, sometimes you take these little additions of color as the cosmos wanting to get involved. So if you grab a paint and you pick up a little bit of extra from your palette and start laying it on there, just go, oh, okay, I wonder if that would work. Can I use that? Basically, nothing's a mistake. Everything's just a step on the way. Now, a number of people have asked me, as we got down to these figures, how do you make flesh tone, they said to me. And for those of you who have written down my web address, you will find a tutorial on how to make flesh tone. Having said that, the tutorial will say, which flesh tone? Because there isn't such a thing as flesh tone. Flesh tone is only a color that you see. And what you have to do is figure out what that color is to paint it. As soon as you get into the intellectual concept of flesh tone, you start walking down the wrong path. You start getting yourself into a real intellectual dilemma. In this tutorial, you are going to find, what I do is I take a photo reference, strongly light-dark photo reference. I will pick out 5 flesh tones in that photo reference, and I'll show you that the flesh tones run from pure white to black to green to bright orange. Basically, those are all flesh tones. So the idea isn't to get caught up in the concept of flesh tone. The idea is to look at what you're painting. Painting is really an exercise in seeing. That's all it is. Okay, so as I say, I can go on forever doing this, and for those of you who've been wandering by me out at the doorway there, you've noticed that it has taken a little while to get to that point. So what I'm going to do is take this off and get going on this one. Because I've shown you, yes, like a cooking show, and here it is coming out of the oven. I wanted to show you the way you start with the larger portions, the way you start just by slapping it on. I wanted to show you how to just grab it off the palette and put it on the canvas and just go for it. But now I also want to show you how it doesn't matter what's on there at first. A lot of people get really fussed about that very first brush stroke in that part of the canvas, thinking, oddly enough, that that's the last time you're going to touch that. That it has to be crisp and fresh and clean, and has to be done so perfectly that no one will ever question it. The problem is, you have to question it as soon as it goes on there, because these brush strokes here are in relationship to those brush strokes there and those brush strokes there. And you're never going to know whether it works until they're all in place. And once they're there, it doesn't matter. You just have to then start working them. So, having said that, let me see what else I need to do. Okay. Oh, look, a clean brush. Okay. Let me just put out a little more paint here. See, I told you, use it up quickly, right? So you might as well squeeze out a lot. Yeah, well, the big piece of real estate up here can be handled in a very short time, too. There's a point where these paintings have got to work for me in 6 to 8 hours. And if they don't, it takes me 6 to 8 months to find out why not. So it's really a case of focusing. It's just about getting into here and focusing. Now, as you can see, this one was initially painted to be quite blue. And it doesn't matter. It has the relative tonal relationships, but the color's not quite right. That's fine. Because I'm going to go back into it and make them different. Because I've got a baseline now. I've got a baseline that I can work with. And as I put the paint on, I see how it relates to what's around it and what's next to it. And just brush it into place. And you'll notice in a lot of cases, it's not a case of squeezing the bristles so you get the paint to ooze out in a big glob. Often it's a case of just barely rubbing the surface. So it just touches. And in some cases, it just barely covers or doesn't quite cover. Also, the beauty of the big brush is you can put it on one side if you've got too much paint to actually move it around, flip the brush over. Now I can move around that paint without adding more to it. Like that. So, this is where it gets more and more delicate. Grab a little bit more water. Now it's starting to be more like a watercolor. It goes on a little bit lighter. It starts to cover and tint. We've got the majority of the painting is covered with something close, not necessarily the right color, but something close to the right tonal range. The whole thing has a sense of working together. You can start putting the paint over all sorts of different parts of it. You notice I'm going over the lights and the darks. There's no edge because there literally is no edge to this part of the painting. Even this dark part, if I just rub it a little bit, just like that, I get just a bit of paint off. So it just lightens it. It doesn't change it. All the colors that are on here now, some of them can just stay there. And you just lighten them up, or you just darken them down a little bit, or you just fuzz the edges. Because they're all already in place. They're already part of the matrix of the painting.
So when you first start your painting, the paint is thick.
The paint is thick.
Work to thinner and thinner paint.
Yes, just Just keep working to thinner and thinner paint, working to a lighter and lighter touch as to how it goes on. Lighter and lighter effect. You'll notice that I'm starting to blur edges now, right? Some of these areas are not when there's kind of hard edge where you got thick paint against thick paint. Now it's a case of blurring edges because a lot of this is about slight effect of. It's not something that is really strong like that. And that's how you can start to get the painting to have a sense of reality without being absolutely crisply real. Is the woman here who had that painting that took 6 months to do, that was in the critiquing party over there? Critique? Did you guys see that? Ando's critique? If any of you got up really close, it was fascinating how small those little brush strokes were. And that's an amazing technique and good honor for doing it that way. Having said that, what I'm trying to tell you is that level of detail is not required to make it work. So I want you to entertain the concept that it will work without needing to be photorealistic. It still works. Okay, what colors do I have? Okay, so we bring a bit more reds up into there. I am, for the first time in this whole process, cleaning paint out of my brush here. Just in case you hadn't noticed. Let's grab this one. Now, for the sake of time, I'm washing the brush in the bucket. I don't normally wash the brush in the bucket. I normally go and wash the brush in the sink. Because the instant I've washed the brush in the bucket, the water is now highly tinted with color, and everything I do will be that color. So, one of the secrets of keeping relatively clean color is to keep relatively clean water. Okay, right, so let's lay a little bit in here. Bring this back up. Let's bring this back up. Look at that, okay. Also,
What color do you have in your brush?
white and a touch of light red, just a touch. And it's going over the bluish white that's already here, but it's not completely obliterating it. Because the original paint on the canvas is a bluish white. Some parts, like right here, let me just grab some real white here. Right here is a real white. Lay that in, lay that in. Like that. Okay, let's go back to doing here. Now sometimes a painting will hover in the mud stage forever. And then all of a sudden I'll put one brush stroke on and I'll go, that's it, I'm done. It's really important to listen to that one. I've had the experience of doing a painting. It was actually a portrait of a friend of mine. And it surprised me because it was done in 45 minutes. And the very next thought I had was, that wasn't long enough. And from then on, every brush stroke screwed it up. So it's really important to listen to what your inner artist is saying to you about stopping. Now, all of that color isn't quite right, but that's fine by me at the moment because I want to do something else. Let's put a red. Let's go back in, do a touch of red on it. There we go. big brush, but you can do a tiny little brush stroke. A tiny little piece right there. Without having to go, okay, well I need another brush, where's that brush going? And mess around. Because this is about just getting at it. Just making it work, making it sing. Right before your eyes. Okay. Where am I? What day is this? All right, here we go. You've all had that feeling, right? You're painting away, and then suddenly you realize, oh, what time is it? Has it been? It's been 15 minutes yet? No, it's been 6 hours. Oh, okay. See how you can get the arm going? Now, you notice how muddy and sloppy this line is here? How I'm putting it on, really kind of muddy and sloppy. It doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter. Because I'm going to go back in anyway and come back at it from the side. Because everything's relative. Everything's in relationship to everything else. Pull it down the side. Pull it down the other side. It's not really about how straight the line is, how dark the line is, how light the line is. It's how the line is in relationship to the rest of it. In fact, this particular line is too distinct. It's too dark. So with a slightly dryish brush, just go back over it. Just like that. And you just bring it down to the tone that you need for it to work. Like that. You know, the problem with this stage, I can't get Barnett back. Here. So, how's he doing? All right. All right, I'm down here now. You know what? I kind of like it down here. Let's stand down here for a little bit. Because I'm going to work on this bottom part. Now, as I was saying, you start with the oil painty kind of approach. You eventually kind of get to it being a little bit waterier and easier over top. You put a little gentler colors over top. And you blend it in slowly. You blend wet over dry. It's always wet over dry, wet over dry. It doesn't matter if the bottom is dry. I know some of you, hands up how many are really frustrated with acrylics because they dry. And you can't blend them because they're dry. Right? All you oil painters in the crowd? It's not about blending wet into wet. It doesn't have to be wet to be blended. Because all you have to do is feather a color over the dry color. Feather the wet color over the dry color. You can get that perfect blend into it. It's just the visual effect you're looking for. Having said that, let's see what we can do down here. Let's try a little white, yellow, blue, light red. See, there's not much left, is there? Okay. So we'll throw a little bit of this color into here. Trying to modify this back again. Again, working toward the effect, the lighting effect. See how much it brings that edge up a little bit better now? I should be shorter. Do a little Toulouse-Lautrec here. You know, Toulouse-Lautrec used to take his paintings in to an art critic who would always go to him and say, I don't know, they're too loose, Lautrec. All right, I know. Don't give up my day job, right? but you just play with it. You play with it. You scrub it lightly over top what's already there. If you need to blend the color down, you just blend it by doing this lovely little messy thing. But you just basically blend it down lighter and lighter and lighter until you got it blended. Ta-da! And as I say, anytime that the paint goes on wrong, just consider it the universe telling you what to do. Okay, a little bit more red. Put some red in there. Right in. Put some red right in here. Just like that. Just like get it in, rub it, scrub it. Have a good time. See how you can suddenly get a texture feeling, get a sense of one over the other. It sort of lightens up. It starts to become less of a solid mass and more of that wonderful reflectivity that a floor sometimes has. And it takes on a much better feel because you're just diving in. You're just laying it in there and doing it. Maybe the art gods think I'm praying to them because I'm on my knees. That must be it. But you just go at it like that. Just go at it. Just let it fly. Like that. You do that with a number 2 brush, I dare you. So you get a texture to the paint. The paint goes on and it starts to feel like it's what it's supposed to feel like. That's what you're trying to do. You're not trying to create a painting. You're trying to create the emotional impact of the visual. And so you do whatever it takes to get the same effect. Okay, having said that, let's see if I can get something going here. There's one other thing I want to show you. I'm not sure I can show it to you in the upright position, because one of the things that I like to do with my paintings in a lot of instances is do a wash in some parts of them, because often there are areas that are relatively close, but the color's not quite right, and rather than change all the colors, I just do a wash of color over top. Or, for those of you who like to intellectualize these things, look around, look at your neighbor. Look at the colors that your neighbor is wearing. Look at their face, look at their outfit, look at the colors of the person next to them. In your mind, you know what those colors are, so you're going to go paint those colors. You're going to paint reds and blacks and, quotes, flesh tone.
Bags
And the bag, oh yeah, the eyes, the bags, okay, good. Bags under the eyes. You're going to paint those, but every color is going to be slightly different. Ultimately, when you start to look at the neighbor again, realize that when the colors you're seeing from that person are filtered by the color of the light in the room. So when you do a wash of color, you're creating the color of the light in the room. You're putting a wash of color that unifies. Let me see if I can do something. Okay. We got a whole lot of water and very little color. So let's just put, often and everybody goes, oh, right. I love that part. But you just put the color on and then you wash it in. Now, as I say, the problem with doing it upright is that you should probably be really quite wet for it to be even thinner than this. But let's go with what this is. Now, this is still too much red, but whatever. It's only acrylic. Let's bring it over here. Let's take that out of there.
The
Bring
bubbles
that
go away.
down. The bubbles do go away, actually. Somebody once told me that the bubbles are because they put a detergent in acrylic. And so it foams. And the bubbles do eventually disappear. I could be completely wrong, as I say. I tend to pass on odd information that's not necessarily correct. Yeah. Don't listen to this. All you ex-students, everything I said was true.
Will that dry lighter?
This will dry lighter, I hope. But it doesn't really matter, because I can go back over it, right? And so basically, just you create the light that the person is in. Create the lighting effect. Let's go back over here. One thing I would do with it probably is go back in and bring out some of these lights, these highlights a little bit more. Let me just put, actually this one works better over here. There we go. With thicker paint in that instance. I would probably go back in and make it more so. But. So you see how all of a sudden they seem like they're more in the same light now. They're not individual little parts. They're sort of living in the same space finally. And even this is too much color at the moment. But yeah, we'll figure it out. There is a point where when you've got it down on the ground and you're washing color over it, it's almost just like dirty water. You know, it's mostly water with just that tint of color to it. And as you're brushing it, it just comes alive, and you can just tell it's exactly the right amount. The problem is you step away for 20 minutes, it dries, and it's still not quite right, so you go back over it again. But so you can do wash after wash after wash, different colors, blues, reds, yellows, whatever seems to work that you need to put in there. So having done that, let me just go back in with some brighter edges, like that. And down this side. So you can start punching stuff out again, start pulling it back up. If you do too many washes, you'll definitely flatten the whole thing right back. So it sometimes doesn't work to do a wash over the whole thing. But if, for instance, you have a figure in the middle and you have a background that's quite textured, sometimes it really helps to wash the background and leave the figure separate, because the background will then flatten and drop back. Okay, let's just start getting really creative here. Creative. Oh, there's a thought. Any questions? I see. How do you know when to stop? I never consider any of my paintings finished, by the way. Hands up. Who figures that their paintings are finished? Oh, well, that's even easier to count. Or that you're finished with them, exactly. No, but my paintings just stop talking to me. In other words, when I look at it, it stops saying, well, I need a little something here, and I need a little something there, and I need a little something there. If you sit with them long enough, and it just, and there's nothing that's really screaming at you to go and do to them, then I consider that finished. There's nothing left to do, really.
What do you do at the very end? Do you lay sign at the varnish or anything like that?
No, I don't varnish them. I used to varnish them. There was a time when I varnished a few paintings just because I thought I should be varnishing my paintings. And every time I varnished a painting, I found something I wanted to change. And so I go in and paint a little bit more. And then I go, okay, that's it, I'm going to varnish that, and I varnish that. And maybe I want to do this part, and I paint a little more over there. And then I went and talked to a friend of mine, Philip Mix, who is a painter, but he's also used to be an art restorer. And I asked him about varnishing acrylic paintings. He said the problem with varnishing acrylic paintings, as opposed to varnishing oil paintings varnish is a separate layer, right? 200 years from now, it starts to yellow, go in, remove the varnish layer, the paint's still there. Problem with varnishing acrylic paintings with acrylic varnish is that it bonds to the color, so that it becomes one surface. So that if it ever yellows, you'll never get it off without taking the painting with it. So what he does with his acrylic paintings is he waxes them.
Wow.
And if he wants a glossy surface, he just polishes the wax.
What sort of wax does he use?
Just a regular carnauba wax, almost like a car wax. Okay, so you can see, you can get in, you can start to create the effect of detail without actually getting carried away with detail. Right? It really is only about effect. That's what a painting is, it's just a series of effects. Any questions? Steve, ooh. Yes?
Can you give us a little bit more detail on the brush? I missed the first part of what you were speaking on.
Excellent, okay. For those, recap on the brush, real quick recap on the brush. Brush is a Purdy brush. I got it from Cloverdale Paints. Unfortunately, I believe Purdy has been bought out by some company, and so it's hard to find an 1.5" XL Dale. They do sell an 1.5" XL Glide. Try to avoid the XL Glide because it's slightly thicker this way, so it's a little fatter. General Paints makes an identical brush, but it has a different title. I forget what the title is, but you can go to General Paints. This is a great brush. I have great success with this brush. Every one of my paintings is done with this brush. I love this brush. And the actual message I want you to take away from this talk is not that this is a magic brush, but that you can find your magic brush out there. What I want you to do is not just get stuck on needing to get all the right equipment. I want you to find the equipment that works for you. I fell into using this brush. I used to use the whole gamut of brushes. And because I paint on a large 30 by 40 canvas, I always used to start with a big brush because I had large areas I needed to fill in. One day I was finishing the painting and realized I hadn't put down the big brush. And I really liked the effect because it wasn't picky. And yet it had enough detail. So I just fell into using just one big brush. But what I want you to take away from this is it's up to you to find what works for you. Don't get stuck on somebody else's formula, even mine. Okay? But this is a great brush.
Can you say the name of it again?
Thought I mentioned that. Did I say it's a great brush?
Can you say the name of it again?
Purdy. P-U-R-D-Y. Yes.
Also make great chocolates.
Yeah, just like the chocolates. You can get them at Home Depot apparently. Also, apparently, all the home hardware shops up and down the island always know when I have a class in town because they're sold out of Purdy brushes real quick. And any other questions? Yes?
Your method of painting is very easygoing, and it's almost as though you're not thinking about it.
Thank you. I'm not. That's the point.
When I look at your painting, I see under the dress you've got red. Are you thinking, that there's going to be some reflection? Or
What, this one? No, I'm not.
That just happened to happen.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for saying that, because another one of the things I want you to take away from this is the concept of art is not an intellectual exercise. Art is, as far as I'm concerned, art is an exercise in action-reaction. I take this image and I've drawn it in place, so this is where I'm going anyway. This is the roadmap as to where I'm going. These are the colors I'm trying to put into place. And as long as I'm working in this area, not thinking, thank you, not thinking, but just working in this area, I see red. I put red. I see red-ish, really. It's not a case of solid red, right? You just put the colors that you see before you. That's why there is no answer to the concept of what is a flesh tone, because you get up in here and you start seeing what colors are there. That's all I do, is find out what colors are there and I put them in there. Without question, without thinking. That's why it's great to sing. Because you cannot think and sing at the same time. You just have to go with it. I play drums. How many people play drums in this room? Okay. All right, just thought I'd ask. How many people play instruments in this room, right? There you go. Now, you know yourself that to play music, yes, you have to figure out where to put your fingers on whatever it is you're playing or what to do. But ultimately, when you get down to when the music is really flowing, that's when it just comes out of you. And that's what this is supposed to do, is just come out of you. It's not a case of thinking, it's a case of just doing. Now I have no more to say.
So that you can go and see what the rest of the family is.
Yeah, put the camera stuff away.